When I first left home to go to university, my parents co-signed a mortgage for me on an apartment-style condominium in a small Canadian city. This was 20 years ago, so it came in at a original poster-ping $52,000. They thought that this was a much better and economical choice than trying to find an apartment and deal with landlords. I loved the idea and moved into my new home. The building was almost entirely original posterolated by the 65-plus crowd. It was small and only had 24 units split into two halves. I had a basement condo. It was a nice place, nothing fancy, but amazing for a student. I was young, 19, but I was quiet, kept to myself and didn't do the whole party thing. I got along with most of my neighbors. I'd help them out moving heavy things or carrying groceries upstairs. I was acutely aware of the age gap and the general image of a university student, so I made sure to be just an all-around great guy to avoid conflict. The one person I could never see eye to eye with was my upstairs neighbor. For a 70-year-old woman that couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds, she walked like a damned elephant. She'd have gospel music on her TV at max volume at 5 a.m. on Sundays. She'd make remarks about that damn kid whenever something was left out of place. She even went so far as to accusing me of breaking into her car and making a police statement saying she saw me do it. Unfortunately for her, I was out of the country on an internship at the time, but still she persisted being a pain in my ass. I tried to approach her about the TV issue, and her response was to make sure that it was no longer just Sunday. After a couple of years of attempted diplomacy, it was clear that nothing I did would make things better. Others in the building probably knew she had it out for me, but why would this adorable little old lady try to lie and get me thrown out of the building by the condo board? She tried at least 11 times while I lived there. 7 years into my time living there, I was at my job with an ambulance service just north of the city. I got called to a shooting. Guy shot his neighbor in a land dispute. The neighbor survived, but there was of course going to be a police investigation. The investigating officers called me to get a statement and offered to just come over to do it, rather than have me travel. One of them was a constable I'd worked with quite a bit, so I said sure. We set a time for about an hour after I'd get home from work. I was just getting out of the shower when they buzzed to get into the building. I said, "Come in. I'll be out in a second." I hit the door buzzer and quickly grabbed some pants and a shirt. I heard them come in and then walk upstairs. As I'm trying to throw on clothes, I hear them knock on my upstairs neighbor's door. They introduced themselves as being from Royal Canadian Mounted Police Major Crimes Division and that they were looking for me. Balls. She says, "Oh, he lives downstairs. What do you want with him?" They thanked her and informed her that they couldn't say, as it was an active investigation. My heart sank. But then I had a thought. It only took about 15 minutes to do my statement and they went on their way. And then the fun began. I knew the rumor mill would be starting. She would tell everyone that would listen that Major Crimes was looking for me and that I must be some sort of criminal. I decided to see where this went. Pretty soon I'm getting side-eye in the hallway. Neighbors are steering clear of me, so I know she's been talking. Turns out I've been arrested for robbery and kidnapping and must be out on bail according to her. I found this out when one of my neighbors who was on the condo board showed up with a letter demanding an explanation and threats to have me kicked out. I asked him what this was all about, and he said, "Well, Linda, not her name, sent us a letter about what had happened and we had to have an emergency board meeting because P-Original Postal don't feel safe with you here." I said that per the bylaws of the condo board, before any action could be taken, I could request a meeting to review and provide a defense. Linda was on the board, so I know she'd be there. They set a date for a week from then, but I was given a caution that it didn't look good for me and that I would have to do a lot of explaining. The meeting day comes. Linda is sitting smugly looking at me. The other board members are giving me dirty looks. The board president asks what I have to say in my defense. I stand and quietly distribute a letter on Royal Canadian Mounted Police letterhead, signed by the regional superintendent that says, "Mr. Zenmedic is not under suspicion of any crimes, past or current, and has not been arrested, detained, or questioned as a suspect in any criminal matter. His duties as a paramedic will often require him to make statements in regards to ongoing investigations, and in this instance on date, Investigators had gone to obtain a statement about an ongoing investigation for which he was professionally involved. At no time did the members disclose, or in any way indicate that he had any involvement in any wrongdoings. I am deeply saddened by the necessity of this letter, and we will be re-original postulating an investigation into a previous incident regarding false statements made against him. You could tell when P. original postal read and understood it. The dirty looks shifted from me to Linda. She exclaimed that it must be a forgery. She witnessed me being led off in handcuffs. She pleaded that they should believe her. It didn't help her. I stood and addressed the board and outlined the years of abuse and harassment, including the false accusation of break and enter to a vehicle. I informed the board that on advice of my lawyer that I do not discuss the matter further with any member of the board, as Linda being part of it and using her position for the purposes of harassment original postern the board as a whole to litigation, and I was still weighing my original postertions. The next day I had a knock on my door. The board president had informed me that Linda was removed from the board and that she was given warning about her conduct and that any further harassment could result in proceedings to have her removed from the building. She also had a visit from police with a summons for providing a false statement and obstructing a peace officer. She had to attend court. She pled guilty to both and was given a suspended sentence and 1-year condition not to harass, threaten, or intentionally inconvenience me in any way. If she abided her conditions, she would receive an absolute discharge, meaning it would be removed from her record, like it never happened. I moved to another province before her year was up, but for a brief period of time, I actually got to sleep in on Sunday mornings. Comment by user. Exceptionally well played. Woman goes from accusing you incorrectly of crimes to being convicted of one herself. Reply by original poster. Yes. I had wondered why nothing ever came of the false statement about the car break-in, but I had just assumed that it was because she was old. I found out just a couple of years ago that the constable investigating that incident was her nephew. I found out through another original poster friend who was part of the disciplinary hearing for him, and that was just one of many things he ended up being disciplined for. Comment by user. Ultimately, it seems like you handled the situation with dignity and composure, letting the truth speak for itself. Well done, fellow Redditor. Reply by original poster. Thank you. It took a lot of self-control not to do things to mess with her. I was even her secret Santa 1 year and got her something thoughtful. Unfortunately, as a young guy, I knew I'd be always fighting an uphill battle in a he said, she said situation, so I figured the nicer I was overall, the easier my life would be. Comment by user. I would have blurted the truth out as soon as possible. Which would have been, he said, she said, and of course she would have won because she's been there longer and was on the board. Bravo. Far better to have a public, professional reveal. Must have been so satisfying. Reply by original poster. The really satisfying part was the realization by everyone present that I was, in fact, that nice young man. Part of me felt bad for her having to deal with legal proceedings, but she did break the law. Comment by user. Fantastic. You played the long game and got here good. I don't think I would have had your patience. And you're an excellent storyteller, by the way. Reply by original poster. Thank you. Comment by user. Linda loves lying. Paramedic proves persistent. Reply by original poster. Perfect. Comment by user. Listen, Linda. Reply by original poster. That may have been the inspiration for the renaming of the neighbor. Comment by user. This is one of the best posts I've read. Well played. Reply by original poster. I think the most poetic part of it is that she did it entirely to herself. All I needed was a letter with the truth. Comment by user. The amount of control the condo board has to force you to explain things that they should have no right knowing is so wild to me. Arbitrary piddly authorities like a condo board can compel you to explain how you're not guilty of a crime because some asshole said you committed a crime? Is that actually a legal thing? You have no right to be silent or tell them to fuck off, you're not explaining shit. Reply by original poster. The process to have someone removed is long and requires a court ruling. Many condo boards take the same approach as the HOAs south of the border and just endlessly send letters until the person gives up and leaves. I could have told them to pound sand when they delivered the letter and let it play out in court proceedings at some point down the road, but I didn't want that headache. I also didn't mind the rest of my neighbors, so I figured I'd save everybody time, effort and money and end it there. Comment by user. Did you ever find out why she had singled you out as her target? Was it because you were her downstairs neighbor? Because you're young? Didn't think you were / insert religion / enough? Seems like she must have had some legitimate beef with you to be such a busybody bitch for so long. Reply by original poster. It's because I was young and quiet. I had to be up to something. The previous owners and her were super close, but the husband had dementia and they moved to a facility. They both died shortly after, sadly. There was a part of me that wonders if she somehow blamed me or projected her feelings of loss onto me. Comment by user. Wonderful story and honorable revenge. However, I am left wondering what your condo is worth on the current market. Reply by original poster. When I left, I sold for $118,000. It has since had quite a few upgrades. The carpet and walls were all pink while I lived there, and it sold in 2019 for $152,000. Comment by user. I can't stand these dusty old cunts who have no lives and want to make everyone around them as miserable as they are. Good for you, original poster. Reply by original poster. What always got to me was that she always seemed like just the sweetest little old lady. Hell, when one of my girlfriends was house-sitting for me during one of my internships, she invited her up for tea and they had a lovely chat. Girlfriend thought she was just the sweetest. But she had also slept over and heard the TV on at all hours and was able to address the elephant on the room. Comment by user. I'm English, so I don't know Canadian housing laws. But can they actually kick you out of a original posterity that you own, as original poster opposed to renting? Reply by original poster. Condominium boards in Canada have earned a reputation for being just as bad as American homeowners associations. The strategy is to make threats that are quasi-enforceable, which is basically legal harassment, and then go before a court for an order. They would have a significant burden of proof in a courtroom, but that same burden doesn't exist in board meetings and decision-making. I knew that any allegations made wouldn't be able to be proven, so I never felt like I was at risk of having to sell my home. I also knew that I would likely be facing months to years of letters and threats if I didn't just end it. Comment by user. Well played. The icing on the cake could have been to replace Linda on the condo board with you. Reply by original poster. I had been asked a bunch of times while I lived there to join the board, but I just never had the time or the desire to get involved. Comment by user. This is epic. I love it. Thank goodness you got that letter in time for the meeting. Well done, sir. Reply by original poster. It wasn't hard for me to do. Emergency services is a small community, and I was in a forensic psychology program, so I spent a lot of time with local and regional law enforcement. While I didn't know the superintendent well, we had spoken on a number of occasions for unrelated things. I figured if he wouldn't, the sergeant in charge of the investigation would. Comment by user. It was semi-believable till the apology from the board president. What an absolute joke. Not to mention, why the F did they go a floor above original poster and knocked on her door? A monkey with a pen can come up with better story. Reply by original poster. You brought up a point that I had missed. The building started life as apartments and was converted to condos shortly after, sometimes in the 70s. I had mentioned it was split into two sides, and because of this it had an atypical numbering convention. All units were identified by a number for the side and a letter for the suite. My unit was 2A, hers was 2F. When I had spoken to them on the phone, I'd told them, I'm the first on the left. There weren't any suite numbers on the doors or a map. Just 4 suites per floor. Most reasonable original postal would assume that 2A would be on the second floor. You must not be familiar with Canadian culture. Apologies and politeness are important. Though global influences and cultural shifts have eroded this, many of us still pride ourselves on being polite and kind, especially to a person who you've lived across the hall from for years and has helped you move bookshelves, jump-started your car, and drove you to medical appointments after eye surgery. Apologies are so key to the Canadian identity that in the majority of the country, they are not considered a legal admission of guilt or wrongdoing and cannot be used as evidence. That is why he apologized, because he was a neighbor and a friend and it was the right thing to do. I know we are living in a challenging and uncertain world, but kindness and grace still matter. If we spent a little more time being kind to each other and finding our common ground rather than engaging in vitriolic arguments over ideology, we would all be a little better off for the efforts. Comment by user. I'm curious, was her motivation purely ageism? Or do you happen to be a different race or somewhat obvious odd gender expression or sexuality? Her behavior just seems so extreme to be explained by pure ageism. Reply by original poster. I'm a Caucasian, cisgender, heterosexual male. I check all the boxes for not discriminated against. I had really wondered about why I was such a target, and the only thing I could come up with is that she was very close with the former owners. The husband had devil original poster dementia, and they moved to a facility where he could get the care he needed. They had both died within a year or so of me moving in, so I wondered if her actions towards me were a projection of her feelings of loss or abandonment. She didn't often have visitors, and I knew nothing of her family. Or she was just a cranky old bat hellbent on making life miserable for those of us who are happy. Please leave your story in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to get new update. Thank you.